Diabetes can feel incredibly isolating. The people around you usually don't understand what you're going through, especially all of the stuff you're doing in the background around food and numbers and day-to-day or even minute-by-minute decisions. My name is Scott Johnson. I've lived with type 1 diabetes for 45 years, and today we're going to talk about why community matters and how peer support can change your experience with diabetes. You don't have to do this alone. I'm excited to welcome Mila Clarke to the show. Mila is a board-certified health and wellness coach, public health nutritionist, and the creator of Hangry Woman and the Glucose Guide communities. Mila also lives with diabetes, and we'll hear more about that in a moment. Mila, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Scott. I'm so excited to chat today.
I'm excited too. Let's maybe help people get to know a little bit about you and your diabetes story. You had not the average entry into diabetes, but I bet it actually happens more often than we would like to admit. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey with diabetes?
Yeah, so about 10 years ago, my 10th diaversary is in 2026. It's May 5th, 2026. I went to primary care because I was feeling really exhausted and tired. I was waking up in the middle of the night, like 10 times to have to pee. And I was like, this is just not normal for someone in their 20s who is actively taking care and actually interested in their health. And so I found myself in the doctor's office on the other side of a type 2 diabetes diagnosis at first. And it happens a lot more than people realize, particularly when you're getting diagnosed at an older age. So I put that in quotes, I was 26 when I was diagnosed, but that's at the time, people weren't looking at 26-year-olds and being like, you have type 1 diabetes. And so I think I had this entry point into living with diabetes that was a lot slower than most people, but was so frustrating because I was being denied access to insulin. I was being told that if I got on insulin, that it meant that I was too far gone and that I was ruining my health and my body. And I know that we'll talk about that today too.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine how frustrating it was for you getting an incorrect diagnosis, right? I can't imagine how hard it must have been for you to live for 4 years with not getting the right medications, which also meant you weren't feeling good. Tell me a little bit more about what that window of time was like for you.
Yeah. I think the thing that was so frustrating to me at the time was that I went to the doctor to feel better. And I felt like I just continually kept feeling worse and worse and worse and being met with the message that I just needed to exercise more and change my diet. And I would see my A1C improve. It was frustrating to be in a position where I felt like I was doing all of the things that I could do to improve my health. And I wasn't seeing the changes happen. But I have a very good group of girlfriends, and they know who they are, who I think over and over tried to shake me out of that denial. And they were like, just go ask to see an endocrinologist so that you can get tested. The day that I realized that it was a simple blood test, I was like, are you kidding me? I've been feeling this way for so long. And all someone had to do was order blood work. And that's it. And it would have given us the answer to get us onto the right path. But it took so much fighting and it took so much energy and effort just trying to be believed in a system that already doesn't believe people who look like me. But that also kind of looked at me and said, well, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm the expert here. I'm the doctor. And you're asking for things that you don't need. And it turned out that I was asking for exactly the right things. And even people who, were not professionals could see that and were telling me if you just go do this thing, you'll get the right answer. And so it took me, I feel like, a really long time to work up the courage to finally be like, I'm upset and I'm frustrated and I'm not getting anywhere and I'm spending tons of money on oral medications that make me feel like crap all the time and they're not doing anything. And I know that this isn't right. And I think going through the process, like I saw 4 doctors in that 4-year period. And it wasn't until the last one, who was a Black woman, somebody who looked like me, somebody who like, I felt like, okay, I can have this vulnerability in this conversation. And I mean, like, as soon as I like sat in the chair, I just started crying. And I was like, I have been at this for so long and I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. And I don't know why this isn't working. And she was the first person to say, I honestly don't have an answer for you, but what I can do is make sure that you get to the right specialist who can find the answer for you. And that, for me, changed everything. Within a couple of weeks, I was in an endo's office. I was getting the blood work done, and I was finding out my diagnosis, a day after. And it felt like such relief and at the same time, such grief, because I felt like I have been told these same things for years and years and years of like how to manage diabetes. And the entire time, I actually needed a whole other rule book to be able to live by, and a whole other set of tools that I wasn't being given because nobody would believe me. And so, I think it really fostered a sense of me being really diligent and vocal and learning that advocacy is really, really important. But I also think that I would have eventually gotten here, but I think that the community that I had around me and the people that were advocating for me, even behind the scenes, to advocate for myself, they're so much a part of why I think I got that answer a lot sooner, because they really gave me the confidence to say, you can ask for these things, and like, you're not doing anything wrong by telling your doctor you think they're wrong. And so I think that was something that was so huge to me. And that also really taught me the value of like having other people with diabetes in your circle and in your corner, because you don't know what you don't know. And community can be such a big part of giving you that information and that knowledge and like the confidence to move out of that rut that you feel like you're stuck in.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's 2 things I want to kind of dig on a little bit here. One is finding that community in that original space you were, but I want to come back to that in a second. I want to dig in a little bit on how did you find the strength and the courage to fight through that frustration with changing doctors several times. I imagine I can picture myself, if I finally built up the courage to do it once, I would have felt like, wow. And then only to bump into the same experience with the second doctor, that probably would have been it for me. I'm not sure I would have been able to build up the courage to do it again. How did you do that? It speaks a lot to your character, but how did you find the courage and strength to do that, not only once, not only twice, but several times?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just a matter of how I felt. I felt so awful physically, mentally, emotionally, that I just was like, somebody has to help me get out of whatever this is. And I am going to keep asking questions until I get to the point where I get the right answer. And I just wasn't convinced. Like when I sat in that chair and I was looking at my labs with my primary care doctor, I was like, everything else is normal. My blood sugars are so abnormal. Like a 300 blood sugar feels like fasting blood sugar feels like it warrants maybe a little bit of extra questioning and discovery, but it was kind of like, nope, this is just how we do the test and determine you have type 2 diabetes. So that's what you have. And so for me, it was like, okay, I'm not convinced. And so I'm going to ask more questions and I'm going to do more. And like, I'm going to leave a doctor who I feel like isn't listening to me. And I'm going to find somebody who will finally listen to me. And so I'm really glad that that day I was so frustrated and that I was honest with the provider that I saw, because it's easy to walk in and, you'll meet your doctor and they're like, hey, what's going on? Tell me a little bit about you. And you're tempted to say like, well, things are going okay. Like, this is how it's going. And like that day she asked me how I was. And I think I was literally at my wit's end. And I just I'm not the type of person that normally will burst into tears, but I did that day. And she, picked up a tissue, handed it to me. And she said, it's okay. Like, we're going to figure it out. And if I don't have the answer, I know who to send you to so that we get it. And I feel like so lucky that I got to that place. And honestly, if that hadn't been the answer at that point, I don't know how it would have gone afterward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it speaks to the strength of your character and one of the many things that makes you the amazing person you are. And it's kind of a sad state of affairs in how quickly we just kind of take what the answers that we're given and fit our lives to them versus just kind of thinking like, no, something's not right here. I need to keep digging, because it's exhausting to keep digging, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's exhausting to also disagree, to have to like defend your position and to, I think like be able to put the words together to say, this is why I'm feeling this way in a way that makes sense to someone else. And especially like within the state of care that we have, you know, you only have a 15-minute appointment. It's really hard to get across everything that you're feeling and thinking and all of the questions that you have just in that time frame. And then like the discomfort of saying like, I know that you have medical training. I know that you're my doctor and that I'm sitting here in front of you, but I disagree. Like, I think there should be something else that's done, and having to have that friction as the patient and sitting there where like you're in front of an authority figure, that can also be really difficult and really taxing. Yeah.
And you don't even, because this is all new to you, you don't even have the language to know what words to put together. And oh, by the way, you feel like crap during all this, right? Like you know, so that's just there's a lot there. Let's come back to community. You mentioned this strong community of people who save your life, right? But where did you find those amazing people early on in your diagnosis journey? Most people don't have those people, right?
Yeah, it's so true. And I think the thing that really benefited me, and, you know, you think back 10 years ago, 2016, like the diabetes online community was sort of a new thing, like not like totally new, but like the participation was a lot different. Yeah. It was different on different platforms. We didn't really have we didn't have TikTok at all. We didn't have Instagram, or we might have, but like the community wasn't necessarily there. And so a lot of people I found through developing recipes for type 2 diabetes, because that's what I thought I was living with. And so I was like, okay, well, if the directive is to eat better, I'm going to do that and I'm going to document it. And maybe people find it and they find a good recipe that they love. Maybe nobody finds it and I've just documented this for myself and it's cool. But there were also, like, as I started digging in and started kind of trying to understand diabetes a little bit more, I started to find like different communities and different places online. And one of those places that I found was a Twitter chat that just kind of like randomly happened with people all around the world called DSMA, hashtag DSMA. And I think that's where I like first encountered you, Scott. Sharice Shockley was the founder of that chat. And so I met her and I kind of told her my story. She was one of the first people to be like, go get tested, go tell them to do blood work because like you're not getting the right answer. Still like my great friend to this day. And I met so many different people from around the world who were so welcoming and so open and so willing to answer questions about just like day-to-day life with diabetes or diabetes tech. Or the thing that I really loved about those chats is that they weren't always like super diabetes focused. Mm-hmm. You actually got to know people as people. And I think for me, you know, I felt so alone in that diagnosis. I felt like I am the only one that is dealing with this and I don't know how to explain it to anybody and I'm ashamed to talk about it and I feel like I've done something so wrong. And then to see all of these people come together from like Germany, from Italy, from the UK, from South America, from like all over the US, just talking freely and openly about diabetes and like sharing stories and sharing tips and sharing like uplifts. To me, it was like, oh my gosh, like if this is the support that I have and I know that I'm not the only one that's doing this and that's having to deal with this, I think I can make it. Like, I think I can do this. I think I can make it happen. And for me, like seeing that there were other people, I think that was the number one thing that really boosted my morale about living with diabetes. Was I was like, okay, there are other people out there who are badass, who are doing really cool stuff, who are like smiling, who are wearing an insulin pump and smiling.
Yeah.
You know, like it was just like, okay, like that's the person that I want to be. I want to be that person wearing my insulin pump and smiling and being like, this isn't going to take me down, and I'm going to be able to do whatever I want to do with the rest of my life. And so like, I think being able to see that and being able to meet people in that way was something that really changed the trajectory of how I felt about diabetes, and how I decided that I wanted to show up in the world for other people who might have been sitting in the same chairs that I was sitting in and felt like I'm at my wit's end and I want to give up, and I just don't feel like there's any help that I can get out there.
You were very brave in stepping out, because at the time you were living with type 2 diabetes, and you mentioned how the space in the online diabetes worlds, it's very type 1 heavy. And there's not many people living with type 2 diabetes that openly talk about their experiences, because there's so much guilt and shame and unfairness thrown at them from the rest of the world. And so you were very brave to take that step out and do that. And I'm hoping that it encourages and encouraged other people to do the same. And it certainly has played a role in what you've built today. Can you talk a little bit about why you think diabetes can feel so isolating, especially in that type 2 world, but even for those of us with type 1 or LADA, it's still very isolating. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. The thing that comes to mind for me, and particularly with like the frame of type 2 diabetes, is that I'm one person who's lived one foot on either side of each diagnosis. And so I remember getting my type 2 diabetes diagnosis and the messaging being like, you're 26 years old. This shouldn't be happening to you. What are you doing? Why are your blood sugars like this? You need to do X, Y, and Z, because if you start to go on medication, if you start to go on insulin, if you start to have to use any of these tools, that's going to be the rest of your life. And there's never going to be any turning around. You're never going to be healthy. You're going to lose your eyesight. You're going to lose your feet. Don't you know you have family members who are living with this condition? Don't you see what it's like for them? The messaging is so negative when you literally are just getting an answer and you're like, what is happening? Like, what did I do? Like, what did I do that was like so wrong to get me here? And like, then you're scared and you're like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. Like, this is really terrifying. And I think on the other side, like in a type 1 diagnosis, you still get that feeling of fear and that feeling of, I don't know if I can do this for the rest of my life. Like, this is kind of crazy that I literally am like a little Tamagotchi that I have to take care of every single day. But then on the other hand, the message of support and the warmth that I got when I found out that I had my LADA diagnosis, like it was a radically different conversation. My endo sat there with me and said, I know this news is shocking. And I know that you have been told for a really long time that if you just did these things, it would work. But right now I'm telling you that you are going to have this diagnosis for the rest of your life, but you have support, you have tools. We have insulin pumps that you can try. If you're uncomfortable with an insulin pump, let's discuss doing pens and how that can work into your lifestyle. Like the just support was so overwhelming, almost in the way that like the chastising was overwhelming. Yeah. And I was so surprised by just how different it can be to be sitting in those chairs, even as the same person, and get radically different messages. Because now we know, like, there are so many tools for type 2 diabetes that can help someone manage and that can help them live a healthy life, even with a diabetes diagnosis. It's very similar for type 1. It's just the method and the way that it's caused that's different, the method and the way that it is onset. And so for me, like, even reflecting on those like very two different messages, like I can never say that, one diagnosis is better than the other. They're just different. Sure. But I think that the approaches, for sure, the approach to supporting someone with type 1 diabetes is not matched and is not the same when someone gets diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And I think that you're meant to feel shame, you're meant to feel blame, and you're meant to feel stigmatized in order to, like, in like air quotes for the audience, kick you into gear. Yeah. But what you really need in that moment is support and a kind word, because you're already saying the worst things about yourself after knowing that, like, that's the diagnosis that you got. And then some hope that you have a way forward and that there are things that you can do to be able to manage and be healthy and not feel terrible all the time, and to be able to live a really long life with the illness that you're living with. I always want to help people understand is like, yes, there are differences, but like nobody with this illness deserves stigma and shame and blame for what they're living with. Like, we should all be willing and ready to uplift someone, because the end goal for us all is to just live happy, healthy lives with diabetes.
Yeah, amen to that. This is a great time to take a break, and we're going to dig into more around community and what that means for all of us living with diabetes in just a second.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I'm a part of the Blue Circle Health team, and I've lived with type 1 diabetes for 18 years. One of our favorite things is sharing stories from people who've participated in the program. And I have one here from Susan in Florida, who's been living with type 1 diabetes for 67 years. I'm going to read it for you. T1D is a relentless daily struggle, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Before connecting with Blue Circle Health, I constantly felt I wasn't doing enough. This incredible charitable organization provided me with a comprehensive team consisting of a dedicated endocrinologist, a physician's assistant who truly understands because she's also a T1D, and another T1D peer who was always available to me. Beyond that, they offered a plethora of support groups filled with people who share similar experiences. This team listened to my stress and, for the first time in my life, affirmed my ability to take excellent care of myself. They introduced me to an ongoing peer support group that I so sorely needed and will continue to be a part of. Blue Circle Health has not just provided medical support. They've given me a profound sense of community and validation. Thank you, Susan. We really appreciate you sharing your story with us.
And before we dive back in, I want to give a quick shout out to a nonprofit that is doing incredible work for our community. You're Just My Type, founded by Laura Pavlakovich. And listen, there's no sponsorship involved. This was not an ad. In fact, Laura doesn't even know that I'm doing this. That's just me showing some love to a great organization. This organization is dedicated to the mental health side of diabetes that sometimes gets overlooked in the doctor's office. They focus on the human element, hosting in-person events and building a rich online community where you can connect with others who truly understand the emotional weight of living with diabetes. If you've ever felt isolated and alone with your diabetes, I highly recommend checking them out at yourjustmytype.org or on social media at yourjustmytype. Welcome back. So, Mila, you have shared how impactful having even just a small community of people has been for you in your diabetes journey. Let's talk a little bit about that. And through this, we'll also learn more about what you have built and are building. But to you, what makes community feel safe and supportive versus judgy and kind of more isolating?
I think really a safe and supportive community is all about the tone that you set when somebody joins. In my community, which is called Glucose Guide, I really lead with, like, even in that first message that I send to someone, like, this is a place of support. It is judgment free. We are all free to manage diabetes in the way that works for us. And No one's going to tell you what to do here, but the hope is that you can contribute to the knowledge that other people want to gain around diabetes management. And especially in peer support groups, I think it's so important to start with that and to lead with that, because it can be really easy to want to join a community and your first instinct is like, well, I want to be here because I want support, but I also want to help other people. And so you can very easily cross the line into finger wagging and to being like, oh no, you shouldn't do things like this. Like that is so inefficient. And like, this is actually how you should do it. And so I think it's really important, like at the onset of developing your community or deciding like what you want that community to be, to really set those parameters.
Yeah, it's so setting the tone from the start and reinforcing the tone in a way that doesn't make people feel shut down. I think you're very, very good at that. And the way that you reinforce that tone that you set is a big part of what I really enjoy about the Glucose Guide community. What about another one of the pitfalls that I see often online is comparison, right?
I think it's opening the floor and just letting people first you set the tone and then also you reinforce that with the way that you respond and the way that you talk with people. I think it is the bravest thing in the world to share your experience from your perspective. For instance, there's 2,000 people, like over 2,000 people in the Glucose Guide community. Someone will post, all 2,000 members can see that. And like, can you imagine standing in a room of 2,000 people bearing your soul and saying, this is what I'm going through. This is how I feel right now. This is what I really need from others. Being able to know that like there's a space out there that really embraces everybody where they are in whatever state they're in and that accepts them and is like willing to be like, hey, we see you. We've got you. Like, I think that is so important. And, not to like do an ad for Blue Circle, but I think that's also something that you guys do so well is that you meet people where they are and you give them the tools that they need to be able to move through this diagnosis. And it's rare. The things that we do are rare and they shouldn't be. They should be the norm. But they are really rare, but they exist.
Can you tell people what lurking is for those that may not be familiar with that word? And talk to me about the value that's there even when just lurking.
You don't have to take any action. You don't really have to do anything except for scroll and read and decide what stays with you and what doesn't. You can start quietly and build up that confidence and that willingness to be able to share when you're ready. It doesn't mean that you're not as into community as somebody else. It really just means that you're operating on a level that you're comfortable with and that you're getting what you need in the way that you need it.
And I think that's the key point is getting what you need in the way that you need it. That's one of the biggest values that connecting with others in the diabetes space online has to offer is that you're able to get what you need when you need it. And there are many, many different ways to do that. And so I love that you brought that point up and talked about how much value there is in lurking. When it comes to sort of checking out different communities that are out there, what are some signs that a community might be a good fit or conversely not a good fit? And if it's not a good fit, should you give up on community or just go find another one? Because there's many out there, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer the second question first. I don't ever quit on community. I think that community is so vital, truly. Our shared experience means so much. And I think there's this huge uplift that you get when you know that there are other people who understand you. You know that there are other people that you can text, that you can chat with. If you don't find the right fit, it's just like anything. It's just like dating. It's just like finding a good care team. You're allowed to leave if you don't like what's happening and you don't like where you are. You always have the choice to go somewhere else. But just if you take nothing else from what I say today, just don't give up on community because it can be so amazing. I think on the other hand, like looking for communities where there's clearly somebody who's moderating and who is like really understanding what conversations need to be had, knowing when to shut down a conversation, like doesn't happen almost ever in our community, like thank goodness. So that's one really important thing is just moderation. I think also just the way that other people interface with you and comment and talk to you, I think is a big flag that you should look for. Like, are you welcomed into the community? How are people sharing with you? Like, is it like a hostile environment and like, you feel like, whoa, I should have never asked that question. Like I'm stepping on some toes. Or do you feel like you're able to actually open up and ask questions? That's something that's super important. Like we all seek community for the camaraderie, for knowing that other people understand. But we're also looking for people who are going to be respectful of who we are as individuals, what we bring to the table and what we offer. And so like you never want to walk into a group where you feel like, okay, I'm going to be othered in this situation. Right. My lived experience isn't going to be treated as something that people really understand or that they're respectful of. And I think you can get some of that from lurking. I think that's also why lurking is a good idea. Like, you know, test the waters a little bit before you dive right in. But I think that it's super important just to like have an awareness of like how you might be treated in this space. And then the last thing that I would say is like, you know, how often is it updated and how often is the information that you're getting updated? You can walk into any type of community. And if you're looking at information that is 10 years old, you're looking at things that are outdated that might not necessarily, not that they won't be accurate, but they might not be accurate for the time. They might not be something that you could apply for yourself today. And so I think that also has an importance.
For someone who maybe feels hesitant or burned by past experiences, where would you recommend they can start with peer support? What's one small step that they can take towards connection?
Honestly, just finding one other person with diabetes that you feel like could be your friend. That could be through an Instagram DM where you saw someone's post and you're like, hey, I thought that was really cool that you said that. Thanks for saying it. Like you're not necessarily in community together by saying that, but you're building a connection. And that's what community is these connections.
What would you say to someone who has maybe been managing diabetes alone for a long time? Again, let's break it down into some steps they can take.
Yeah, I think it really depends. So someone might be managing alone because they want to, and they're just like, I just like doing this by myself. I don't want to hear from anyone else. But if you're somebody who feels like I am doing this by myself and I wish I had more support, there are a few things that you can do. I think you can ask your care provider for recommendations. They usually have some kind of awareness, or they'll send you to a place and say like, oh, I know of this support community that might even be like in your local community. It doesn't even have to be online. It could be people that meet up every Wednesday at like the YMCA and they all have diabetes and they get to know each other. So asking your care team, like they might have a solution or a suggestion for something that's local to you. If that even feels really heavy, that's where I say be a lurker. Just kind of search around and see, like, you know, the Glucose Guide community is like a nutrition-based community. So people are really interested in the foods that they're eating and how that's affecting their bodies. And so they might be looking for like virtual nutrition support. And that's how they found us. So like think about what you need, what your needs are, and seek those things out as well would be a second step. Does this feel like it could be for me? Can I maintain the relationships in this community? Like maybe once a week is way too much to meet, and maybe you want something that's a little bit more low lift. And so thinking about the resources that you have, the circumstances that you're living in, and then like what's most comfortable to you, it can help to be able to find a community. And we live in a world literally where like we can Google anything, you know,
well, and there's an element of kind of spider webbing these connections, right? And what I mean by that is as soon as you start connecting with a couple of people, they are going to have places they connect with and hang out. And you're going to start to learn just from exposure about some of these other communities. And that's another very a good way to get connected is talking to other people. All right. If you were to take everything we talked about today and pick out, I don't know, one or two things that you want someone to take away from listening to this episode, what would those be?
I think the two things that I can think of are, one, if you don't find the right fit for community, don't give up. Like, think of all of the people in your life that you may have dated who weren't the right fit, but then finally you found somebody who was the right fit. Sometimes it just takes kissing a few frogs to get to the place that you want to get to. I think the other thing that I would say is always advocate for yourself. I know it's something we talked about kind of early on, but like advocating for myself, I feel like was the way that I was able to like build this life with diabetes that I have. And so like advocating for yourself and embracing community and being willing to pick up again, even when you feel like it's failing, is so important.
So well said. And it's going to, when you find the right place, it's going to give you exponentially more value than what you ever thought.
Yeah.
Well, Mila, tell people where they can find you, where they can find the Glucose Guide community. Let people know where they can connect with you.
Yeah. So if you want like really delicious diabetes recipes, you can find them at hangrywoman.com. And I'm the Hangry Woman all over the internet. Like, if you Google it, you'll find it. And then if you want to be a part of the Glucose Guide community, you can join at glucoseguide.app. We have an iOS app, a Google Play app, and then an app that's also on the web store. And then we also introduced a nutrition assistant that is a really, really, really cool feature that is so fun to use and so eye-opening. So like, community is free. You can join, use the nutrition assistant and find out more about the background of your foods and why they're doing the things that they are to your blood sugars.
Amazing. Well, Mila, thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you spending so much time with us.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. Thanks, Scott.
If this conversation resonated with you, I hope you'll remember that you don't have to carry diabetes alone, whether that means joining a community, opening up to someone you trust, or simply being a little kinder to yourself. All of that counts. And if you know someone who might be feeling isolated or discouraged, consider sharing this episode with them. We'll include links to Mila's work and some of the community resources in the show notes in case you're ready to explore that support. And be sure to tune in for our next episode. I hope you'll join us. Until then, keep living well with T1D.